Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen? Today we're going to be reviewing Ultimate Spider-Man number 1. We're going to be going through the entirety of the comic, so spoiler warning ahead if you haven't read the issue yourself. And at the end I will be giving my thoughts and opinions on this, so do stay tuned for that. Lastly, if you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's jump right into this comic. Our story begins one January morning, as Peter Parker's going through his morning routine. The story portrays him as a family man, being married to MJ and having 2 kids. The kids' names being Richard and May. Something seems to be bothering Peter Parker, and it's established with MJ that they're going to be talking about it later, but at the moment he has to get to work. Before he leaves, he notices his daughter May is playing around with the spherical object, reminding me of the Fushigis back from like the early 2000s, and Peter snatches it from her, telling her that it's not a toy. Then they move the story over to the Daily Bugle, where many things get established. For starters, the biggest change is the fact that Ben Parker is still alive, and he's the managing editor of the Daily Bugle. Typically it's Robbie Robertson who's the managing editor, but in this case it's Ben Parker, and Peter Parker is an employee at the Daily Bugle. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I call nepotism, and it seems that J. Jonah Jameson is still the boss, although it appears that he's not the owner, as we'll talk about it later in the video, because they do establish that Ben Parker and JJ are supposed to be having a meeting with the top dogs, but Ben and Peter Parker are going to be heading off to go do something during that time, so they won't be able to make it, but Ben does state that he might just make it there on time. Then Ben and Peter leave to go to the event that they're going to be missing out the meeting for. But before they leave, JJ stops Peter and gives him his tie to make him look more respectable and actually fixes it up on him. Clearly the event that they're heading to is going to be important. Important enough that JJ has to stop Peter and actually give him his tie and fix it for him. Then it gets revealed that they're heading to a mass gathering of people that have lost loved ones during this attack on New York. There they established that May Parker herself was one of the ones that was lost during that attack. Alongside her was Norman Osborn and Emily Osborn. During the gathering, Matt Murdock, who's shown to be a priest, is giving a speech on the matter. After he's done, he passes it off to Harry Osborn, who gives a speech himself. After the event ends, both Ben and Peter head back to the Daily Bugle to continue working. Ben Parker walks right into the meeting that's happening that was talked about earlier. In the meeting, it gets revealed that Wilson Fisk is the owner of the Daily Bugle. Fisk wants to change who manages the Daily Bugle. This causes both Ben and JJ to both quit, one after the other. JJ quits first and then Ben. Later in the day, the Green Goblin makes his first appearance, trying to actually make a move on the Kingpin by blowing up his car as he's getting out of it. But that is all we get to see of the Green Goblin. Then we're shown Peter Parker meet up with Ben and JJ at the bar with no name, as they try to convince him into joining their business that they drunkenly came up with. Rationally, of course, after they both stormed out of the Daily Bugle. But then JJ leaves and Peter and Ben have a real man-to-man conversation with each other. Peter tells Ben that he doesn't feel like his life has been right the past 20 years. Ben then tells him that if he feels like he's sleepwalking throughout his life, he should wake up, effectively telling Peter that he should change his life in the right ways. Later on that night, after Peter puts his kids to sleep, he sits down with MJ as she has a glass of wine to finally have a conversation with each other. Peter brings up what's troubling him, and it's the very same deal that he talked about with Uncle Ben. Peter does reassure MJ that nothing will change between them before she heads off to bed, leaving Peter with his own thoughts. Peter then grabs the spherical shiny Fushigi object and walks up to the roof with it. But before anything does happen, we get explained what the very night before was like for Peter Parker, basically before he even goes out throughout his day in the comic. And as he's working at night on his laptop, a mysterious box appears. A hologram appears right above the box of Iron Man, and it's revealed that Tony Stark is underneath the armor, and he begins speaking to Peter. And this is where it gets revealed by Tony that for the past 20 years, the Earth has been missing a superhero. That superhero being Spider-Man. Tony continues telling Peter that he is on a quest to regain the lost heroes that were erased by the Maker when he was creating his own universe how he saw fit. Afterwards, the box that appeared right in front of Peter opens up to reveal the shiny spherical Fushigi object, and Peter takes it. Inside the ball is the very spider that was meant to turn Peter Parker into Spider-Man 20 years ago. So now, ladies and gentlemen, the story reverts right back to where we left Peter Parker off, on the roof, holding the spherical object. And he opens it up. And after he reminisces about the conversations that he had with Ben Parker and MJ, he lets the spider bite him. And we're left on a to be continued, ladies and gentlemen. Now we step into the review part of the video. So what do we think? Easily some of the best ways Spider-Man has been portrayed in a comic in a while. I love it. I enjoy it. I highly recommend this. Go out and buy yourself a copy. I ended up getting myself 2 copies, the variant cover and the cover A. Now, just in case you're curious, my variant cover is the one where he's wearing the Venom suit. I was really looking out for my comic store to have either the Venom suit or the 2099 suit. And so when I saw the Venom suit cover, I snatched it right up. Once again, I highly recommend, if you guys like Spider-Man, go out and find yourself a copy. It is so great to see a different version of Peter Parker with responsibilities as a father as well as a husband. If you've watched Across the Spider-Verse, you've already gotten a little taste of adult Peter with husband duties and father duties. And as it was fresh seeing it in the movies, it's also fresh seeing it in the comics, because in the comics we really don't get something like this. Currently in the mainline The Amazing Spider-Man comics, which is the main Spider-Man comic line, they decide to take a lot more of a non-serious approach, so nothing really seems like it's very critical or too important, and Spider-Man's constantly being belittled, not to mention the fact that MJ is not even dating him in the comics currently. She's dating like some guy named Paul, but I don't want to get too off-railed. If you guys want to find out more what Spider-Man is like in his own The Amazing Spider-Man comic line, you can check out my other videos. I do cover the other comics. One huge change about the comic is the fact that Ben Parker is still alive and he's working at the Daily Bugle. So Peter Parker himself is also working alongside him, but not as big as a role as Ben Parker. They don't specifically say what Peter does for the Daily Bugle, but I'm sure we'll find out in the later issues. But the fact that Ben Parker is still alive brings a brand new perspective as to how Peter Parker himself takes on the mantle of Spider-Man. Peter Parker does get to grow up with the full guidance of Ben Parker, having Ben Parker to look up to as a fatherly figure whenever things get pretty crazy for him, as they do establish as Peter and Ben head off to their mass gathering of people that have lost people during the New York attack, as well as that moment at the bar. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we do get the very first appearance of the Green Goblin in this comic as he tries to take out Wilson Fisk. There's nothing else that gets explained about him, whether he's Harry Osborn or even Norman Osborn. Maybe he survived the attack, but it is the first appearance of the Green Goblin in the Ultimate Universe nonetheless. It is really nice also seeing the fact that MJ and Peter can have a adult conversation and have it actually be taken seriously. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, this is top tier Spider-Man comic stuff. Now, I do want to address the moment when Tony Stark shows up from the future in hologram form to hand off the spider to turn, Peter Parker into Spider-Man. The overall concept where Tony Stark sort of shows up from the future to hand this guy off the spider that turns him into Spider-Man, but before they do acknowledge the fact that Tony Stark has been seen as the person involved in that attack in New York, but Peter still somehow trusts Tony about what he says about the future and the spider and everything not being right for the past 20 years for Peter. It's crazy that Peter just trusts him. Also, it definitely must have been incredibly confused as to anyone that just jumped into the Ultimate Universe. There's definitely a lot more grand context if you do go back and read the Ultimate Invasion comics that came out under the same writer. They definitely go a lot into how this universe was created, and it shows a huge battle of titans. It's honestly a really good read, and brings more context into what Iron Man is doing right now from the future, handing off the spider that's supposed to bite Peter 20 years ago to Peter right now. Yeah, that's definitely confusing. Overall, ladies and gentlemen, I highly recommend this comic. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Personally, myself, I'm very interested to see how they're gonna take this new adult Spider-Man, this new perspective into the character, where they're gonna go with it and what they're gonna do with it. Those are my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. I want to know what you guys thought about the comic if you've read it. Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure everyone enjoyed the comic, so just let me know what your favorite part was about it. And if you hated the comic, what did you hate about it? You must be like the 1% of people that hated the comic. And I want to know what your opinion is on it if you do hate it. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate you guys for watching, and if you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.